What's up, awesome YouTubers, or I1988, or Justin, back here to do a video for you all, and I hope you're all doing well out there. It is pre-October, or October Eve. There we go, that's what I meant to say. October Eve, and tomorrow is October 1st. It is the official Halloween season tomorrow. And today I want to recommend some horror movies that I think you all should check out within the month of October. So this is kind of a pre-Halloween season, and if you're looking for, some new titles to check out, some new movies, if you haven't seen any of these movies, definitely watch them. I tried to pick obscure, underrated ones that not many people talk about. Of course, there could be a fan base, or there is a fan base for most of these movies, but they're a little bit more under the radar compared to a lot of other movies that are out there. Now, not all these are brand new modern movies. I just thought I would pick maybe new movies for you that you haven't checked out yet. So let's get started. This is from now I'd say 2001, 2003, right around that time, and that is Identity. Great movie about a group of people that are staying at this motel, and one by one they start getting killed off, and there's this really interesting twist that you don't see coming the first time you watch this movie. And the first time I saw this movie, I didn't really know what was going on, and that was like 20 years ago when I saw the film. But now, watching it as an adult, I get it now, and I enjoy it a lot more. And I think if you're wanting to find a good thriller, suspenseful movie that has some good twists throughout the film, especially at the end, and a great cast, definitely check out this movie. Directed by James Mangold, who would go and direct, Ford vs. Ferrari and Logan, the recent Indiana Jones movie. Definitely one of his more underrated movies is Identity. So check that one out if you've never seen it. From 1980, this is one of my favorite ghost stories. And again, it has a fan base, but not too many people talk about it. It's one of those titles that you might have heard of the name, but you haven't seen the movie yet. And that is The Changeling, from 1980. Love this one so much. I watch this one at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. I definitely love watching it during the October Halloween season, and I will be watching it next month. I'm very much looking forward to it, but it's one of my favorites. It's about George C. Scott. His character loses his wife and daughter in the beginning of the movie, and so he decides to move away and moves into this big mansion that has a lot of dark history with it and hasn't been lived in for a long time. And once he moves in, a lot of supernatural elements start happening, and it has again another great twist throughout the film that when you see it for the first time you don't expect. So The Changeling, I recommend it. It's a slow burn movie, so just know that, but there are some great suspenseful moments in the film, and I think this is the movie that every time I watch it I love it more and more. So The Changeling. Next one is One Dark Night. This one some people talk about, but again, it's more obscure than a lot of other horror movies from the 80s. This stars Meg Tilly, Adam West, E.J. Daly's in this, and it's directed by Tom McLaughlin, who would direct Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and Sometimes They Come Back. But One Dark Night takes place in a mortuary, and Meg Tilly's character, she is trying to get into this high school club, this elite club, and she has to stay the night in this mortuary. And if she could stay the night in there without getting scared or running away, she is now in this group, and this is her kind of final test. And once she enters the mausoleum or the mortuary, a lot of strange supernatural things start happening, and it's such a great movie. Again, I love watching it during this time of the year, and it's definitely a must-watch. The next one is the second film in the Mother of Tears, or Three Mothers trilogy, and that is Dario Argento's Inferno. This one takes place, I believe, in New York, and it is the follow-up to Suspiria. What I love about all three of these movies, though, Suspiria, Inferno, and Mother of Tears, is they stand on their own as films, but they're all connected. Inferno is one of his more underrated films from the 70s and 80s decades that Dario Argento directed movies, and over time has built a fan base, but it's still not a film that a lot of people talk about. You know, when we talk about Dario Argento, one of the big ones that pops up is Suspiria, which I absolutely love that, and that is my favorite Argento movie. But I love Inferno. I think it's a great follow-up and a great standalone movie in the Three Mothers trilogy, and I highly recommend checking out Inferno. Again, takes place in New York, and a lot of spooky and strange things start happening in the movie. A film that I will still talk about and still talk about and still talk about until I hear more people watch this movie and talk about it, and that is The Legend of Hell House. Came out in 1969 or 1970, somewhere around that time. And, you know, you had films like The Haunting and what's the more pop... House on Haunted Hill. A lot of those movies kind of came out around that same time, like that 10-year span. And Legend of Hell House fell under the radar. And not many people talk about it, of course. There is a fan base for all of these movies. There are people that do enjoy and love these movies. But Legend of Hell House, again, pretty obscure one. You know, we have two scientists, or one scientist, and two mediums, and the scientist's wife all stay at this mansion that has a lot of dark history with it. And once they get there, a lot of spooky, supernatural, ghostly things start happening. It's very effective and eerie for its time, and I just recommend that one quite a bit. One that a lot of people might know of, but again, I don't hear many people review this movie or talk about this movie. I love it. It is a mix of a slasher film, which this came out in the 80s, so you did have a lot of slasher movies back then. But it also has a very old school, you know, old period feel for it. I don't know how you would describe this movie, but I love it a lot, and that is Hell Night with Linda Blair. Such a great one. And again, all these movies have fan bases, but this is one, you know, when we're talking about 80s horror movies, I don't hear a lot of people talk about this one, and more people should. And if you've never seen it, go watch it. It is so worth putting on your watch list next month. It has that October feel. You know, they're dressing up in costumes, and the atmosphere is so spooky and eerie. And it's a fun movie. It is such a fun film, while also very dark and very serious. And I absolutely love Hell Night. So check that one out. Again, I don't hear many people talk about that when they talk about 80s horror movies and 80s slasher movies. I feel like that one kind of falls under the radar. Another one that I feel falls under the radar, but again, I think more people are talking about it now and more people are loving it now, and that is Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. I think this one came out it came out a year before Poltergeist. So I don't know if Spielberg saw this movie and was like, I want, you know, the guy who directed The Funhouse and Texas Chainsaw Massacre to direct Poltergeist, but this came out a year before Poltergeist, and it's one of Tobe Hooper's earlier kind of under-the-radar movies. I feel like Tobe Hooper movies in general are pretty under the radar. You know, the ones that we talk about the most are like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist and, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, even though I think that one's still pretty obscure. Tobe Hooper movies don't get enough love, and The Funhouse is one of them. I love this. It is eerie. It is scary. It's about a group of teenagers. They're going on double dates, and they go to the local fair carnival that's very obscure and you know, has a dark history again with it when it moves from town to town. And they decide to stay in the funhouse overnight, and they witness a murder in the funhouse, and they have to try to survive and try to escape this funhouse and the killers that are in the funhouse. So I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen it. I think the first time you see this movie, there are definitely surprises in this movie. that when I first saw it, I was not expecting. So I'm not going to give a lot away with these films. I'm just going to go say, watch this movie, buy this movie. If you have a 4K player, pick up the 4K if you want to get it. If not, just watch the film. The Funhouse is amazing. It's one of my favorite Tobe Hooper movies, and again, doesn't get as much love. Again, I'll talk about this movie over and over and over until more people see it, but I think this one has more of a fan base than some of the other movies I'm going to talk about. And that is Witchboard. I mostly am just talking about this because I love this movie so much. When I think of 80s horror movies, I think of Witchboard. But also, we have that remake coming out. I don't know if it's coming out this year or if it's coming out next year. I say loosely remake because it really isn't taking the plot of this movie. It's just taking the name of it. But I love Witchboard. Kevin S. Tenney directed Night of the Demons right after this. This was his first movie, and in my opinion, still his best movie. Scary, fun, awesome soundtrack. I love the film. It's about a character named Linda. She's having a party with her boyfriend Jim in the beginning of this movie, and her friend / ex-boyfriend Brandon brings over a Ouija board, and they conjure up or they talk to a spirit of a 10-year-old boy who died. And the Ouija board is left at Linda's house or apartment, and she starts talking to David, the little boy. Or is it David? There's some good twists and turns throughout this, good creepy moments. Again, fun, eerie, very entertaining, awesome soundtrack, awesome characters. I just recommend Witchboard if you've never seen it. I love that. The next one is a made-for-TV movie. Made-for-TV movies in the late 70s, early 80s, even early 70s were fantastic. And, I kind of miss the made-for-TV movies then because they kind of, especially the horror movies, the TV horror movies that came out, really kind of borderline, scary to not so scary. It had those suspenseful moments, it had those scares, but it wasn't too over the top. But it wasn't too friendly either. So, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow was one of those movies. And, again, has a fan base. But how many people talk about it every day? If you're watching YouTube channels, how many people talk about this? I need to talk about this movie more. When I was going through my films, I was like, you know what? This is a movie that I barely talk about. It's a film that I don't really hear too many people talk about. If you grew up with old school horror movies, you probably have seen this. But if you haven't, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow is fantastic and one of the best made-for-TV movies. This character by the name of Bubba is, accused of attacking this little girl. Bubba is special needs, and he has the mind of a 6-year-old, and he befriends this little girl. And the town, especially the 4 main guys in this movie, don't really like Bubba, and they don't like that friendship that he has with this little girl. And this little girl winds up being attacked by this dog. Well, the 4 men decide, because they think that Bubba did it, they decide to go after Bubba, seek revenge on the for what happened with the little girl, and they kill Bubba. And they find out later on that it was actually a dog that attacked the little girl, and it wasn't Bubba, and Bubba was actually trying to save her. After Bubba's death, the men are, the court says that they're not guilty, even though they are guilty of their crime. And one by one, the Scarecrow goes after these men, and they die one by one. So, anyway, really bad plot synopsis. I love this film, though. Check it out if you've never seen it. It is worth watching. It's worth owning if you can get it. This next one came out in 1999, so the year that Blair Witch Project came out. Blair Witch Project is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but another one of my favorites is Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon. I love this imprint release, but Lionsgate also has a Blu-ray, so if you want to get that instead, you can. But if you're a fan of this movie, this is a beautiful release. So again, came out the same year in 1999. Stars Kevin Bacon, and Kevin Bacon has a son in this movie. He lives with his wife and his son. He's the everyday, working man, taking care of his family. And, his son, who's 6 years old, starts talking to something. And they don't know what it is at first, but it's a spirit of a teenage girl who disappeared. And this teenage girl is trying to lead Kevin Bacon's character into finding her and finding out what happened to her. And I really love this. I think it's scary. I think it's creepy. I think it's eerie. It's very entertaining. But again, it's kind of obscure. Again, not every day people are going to talk about this movie. I don't hear a lot of people talk about the movie, especially for 90s horror movies. And this came out again in 1999, so it was that line of like 99 to 2000. So you had that period of films, I'd say from like 99 to 2005, that had all these obscure, ghostly, supernatural movies. And there was like something special about just kind of that time period with horror movies. Kind of the blockbuster day of scary movies. And I do remember renting this from Blockbuster. So Stir of Echoes, check it out if you've never seen it. It is a must-watch. This one's more well-known than a lot of others, but, if you're wanting to get into the fall Halloween atmosphere, of course you should watch Pumpkinhead. Love Pumpkinhead. Again, a revenge flick. In the beginning of this movie, Lance Henderson's son is killed by an accidental motorcycle accident or motocross accident. And he decides to seek revenge on the teenagers involved with his son's death by conjuring up Pumpkinhead. And there's this witch that conjures up Pumpkinhead if the person wants to seek revenge. And so that's what Lance Henderson's character wants to do. But as the movie goes on, Lance's character is able to see what Pumpkinhead is doing, like when he's killing these teenagers. And so he now wants to stop Pumpkinhead from seeking revenge on these people that accidentally killed his son. So Pumpkinhead, amazing. I love it. Again, kind of not completely obscure, but if we're talking 80s horror movies, you're not going to hear people talk about this movie every day when it comes to the 80s horror movies. So check out Pumpkinhead if you've never seen it. Again, it's a little underrated. It's well known. It's kind of on that line, but I still don't hear enough people talk about it. Then we have 1980s The Boogeyman. You can't hide from the Boogeyman. We've had two other movies after this called The Boogeyman, the most recent one that came out this year, but every one of the movies is different. This is a slasher film, supernatural slasher movie that, again, came out in the beginning of that slasher craze, again, 1980. And it surrounds a brother and sister years after a incident that happened when they were kids, are tortured by this evil entity, this evil spirit of a person that hurt them when they were younger. And this thing starts going after them, and there's a mirror involved, and this mirror has something to do with it. And so, it's about this brother and sister trying to move on when they're, older, but still have side effects from when they were kids of what happened to them. Kind of a weird plot synopsis for that one, but The Boogeyman is great. I love The Boogeyman. Not many people probably would say The Boogeyman's great, but I know there is a fan base out there. I'm just one that has always loved this from the early DVD that I had of this movie, and now I have this 4K, which who would have thought The Boogeyman would have gotten a 4K from Vinegar Syndrome, but it is worth owning in your collection. The slasher elements of it, the kills aren't the greatest, but what I really love about this is the tone and the atmosphere. I love spooky, ghostly atmosphere. and this movie has it, and it also has a great score in the movie. I love the trailer too, so if you haven't seen the trailer, go watch it. It's worth watching. It's worth owning in your collection. I want to talk about a Christopher Lee Dracula movie, and my favorite one, that is Dracula AD, or 1917. Sorry, Dracula AD 1972. So this was the early 70s. You still had that Hammer horror movie kind of craze going on, or it was slowly going away. But this is, takes place in modern time, and the ones prior to this all took place, I don't want to say back in the day, but olden times. And this one takes place in the year 1972. It was the big craze, London, England, the music at that time that was coming out, and the wardrobe and the style and the look all felt like early 70s London. And Dracula, Christopher Reeve's Dracula, is back and going after this group of teenagers that conjured him up. So, Dracula AD 1972, my favorite of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, and one that I recommend you check out. It is worth owning. And the last one is a movie that came out this year and didn't do well at the box office. Came out kind of in that week between the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer. But that is Cobweb. I saw this one for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I was very surprised at this movie. I really didn't know too much about it going into the film, but man, this was such a great treat. And I love when we get great horror movies that come out today, because sometimes we're getting, remakes, sequels, prequels, requels, whatever you want to call them, and a lot of these original horror movies that come out don't really do as well, or don't really do well at the box office, and not many people talk about them upon their release. But afterwards, of course, we do hear some talk about these movies, and I feel like Cobweb will be one of those movies. I still don't hear enough people talk about it. If you're looking for brand new original horror movies that aren't sequels, prequels, requels, reboots, Cobweb is one to check out. I won't give too much away, but it surrounds this boy and his parents and something going on in their house. And there's a lot of great twists and great turns throughout this movie. When I was watching it, I would try to guess what was going on, but it would throw me off. And so I recommend checking out Cobweb. It is worth picking up, and you can get that really cheap in stores. So, but that is my stack of movies right there that I recommend you all watch during the Halloween October season. Again, tomorrow is October 1st, so this is a pre-October recommendation. So watch all of these movies. Of course, watch some of your favorites and some other movies that I haven't talked about. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I had a lot of fun making it. So stay tuned for many October videos to come, guys. Everybody, you're in for a real treat, and I hope you enjoy everything that I have coming up. But let me know what you guys think of these movies. Have you seen them? What do you think about them? If you haven't seen them, go watch them. And again, watch, a lot of your favorite ones next month. So, as always, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. In with the positive, out with the negative. Go eat some Skittles. And remember to always be yourself, because you are amazing and you are beautiful. And I'll talk to you later.